Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 are very different games. It's actually pretty crazy to see how far the franchise has come in the 11 or so years it's been going. And I do want to make it clear, despite the title of the video, Destiny 2 as a whole is objectively a better game than Destiny 1. However, that isn't to say that Destiny 2 has perfectly iterated on everything that Destiny 1 introduced. In fact, I believe there are still certain systems and features that the original did better that are currently lacking inside of the sequel, which is exactly the topic of today's video, where we're going to be covering exactly what I and many in the community have agreed Destiny 1 did better. Now, of course, videos like these are very susceptible to the good old rose-tinted glasses, so in all of my discussion points, I have tried to keep things as realistic to today's standards as possible. However, I do genuinely believe in some of the points we're about to discuss, and I promise they're not hyperbole or just nostalgia taking over. So if you enjoy today's content and resonate with the talking points, then your like and subscription would be very much appreciated. The first thing I want to discuss that I feel Destiny 1 did better is factions and vendors, because in Destiny 1, and also at the beginning of Destiny 2's lifecycle, the three factions, Dead Orbit, New Monarchy, and Future War Cult, were prominent gameplay systems that offered separate progression mechanisms alongside the usual rituals. Factions were removed as a feature when Forsaken launched in Destiny 2, and admittedly, a similar system has made a comeback with the Syndicates in Renegades. However, here are the reasons why Destiny 1 handled them better and why I think they should return. For starters, in Destiny 1, you would pledge to a faction of your choice, and now any activity you completed, be it a strike, crucible match, or I believe raid, would award you with reputation for your chosen faction. Once you had gathered enough reputation, you would level up your faction, and in return they offered a selection of rewards. And in the state that Destiny 1 was left in, you could choose from either weapons, armor, or chroma, with the last option being a separate cosmetic feature that isn't that important. Each of these factions offered tons of exclusive weapons and armor, and the vendors that represented them would host randomized weekly offerings incentivizing you to come back every week and check if the ones on sale happened to be god rolls. And many fan favorite weapons came from factions, including things like the original Hung Jury Scout Rifle or the Unto Dust rocket launcher from Dead Orbit, to name a couple. Furthermore, dedication to your faction was rewarded in the form of exotic class items, where reaching rank 25 would offer you a quest to obtain this class item, and once you had earned it, wearing it would further increase reputation gains, thus allowing you to farm rank up packages faster. And yeah, you'd want to be doing this because not only did the factions offer quality weapons and armor, each one had super rare cosmetics like ships and shaders that were highly sought after. One that comes to mind is the Hanged Man shader from Dead Orbit. I remember myself and my friends grinding non-stop to simply earn ourselves a clean black and white shader, which is exactly why this system is so awesome in the first place. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, factions are a separate gameplay system that you engage with in the background while playing all of these standard rituals. They act as a nice side bonus that offer you a decent selection of rewards every once in a while, as well as plenty of rare cosmetics to keep you playing the game and ranking up your faction. One of the things I praise the most from Renegades was the Praxic Blade crystal grind, because tying each of these cosmetic colors to just pure RNG chance from engaging with the core Renegades activities has resulted in a really engaging chase. Because hell yeah, I want to collect all the colors. And something as simple as this, I guarantee you, has generated at least 50 plus hours of gameplay out of me. And it's all just for some pretty colors. So not only did factions offer meaningful gameplay rewards, they also extended playtime by a considerable amount for the people who wanted the rare ships and shaders. And given the success of the Praxic Blade, I definitely think Bungie need to lean more into this in the future. Rare cosmetic chases always keep people playing, and the way factions handle this and more in Destiny 1 is something I sorely miss. The Syndicates in Renegades are a nice little blast from the past, however they aren't perfect and are of course strictly limited to the Renegades experience, not the game as a whole. And just imagine if instead they were able to be ranked up by playing anything you wanted and had their rewards and systems tweaked slightly. What if each time you ranked them up you were guaranteed a shiny accelerated assault blaster weapon? What if the Syndicate shaders were not a guarantee like they are now and instead just a random chance from rank ups? What if there were more shaders, emblems, mementos? I could go on. Furthermore, time periods in Destiny where there isn't really that much going on, such as right now where the honeymoon phase of Renegades has pretty much come to a close, are perfect opportunities for systems like factions to truly shine, because having the unique loot and rare cosmetics give players a solid reason to log back in and grind. And in my opinion, having a similar system in Destiny 2 would very much help with these more quiet periods we now seem to be more commonly finding ourselves in. The faction vendors weren't the only ones that offered these reward track systems that also came with rare cosmetics though. The Crucible Quartermaster and Crucible Handler, aka Shax, featured these same exact systems, but as you may guess, were tied to the Crucible. And depending on your Guardian class, either Zavala, Ikora, or Cade would act as representatives of the Vanguard that also offered rank up packages featuring the same choice between weapons, armor, or chroma. The Cryptarch also offered a rank system, which again had a bunch of rare cosmetics attached to it, as well as as giving you a bonus amount of resources each time you ranked up. Overall, the faction system and more generally how vendors were treated and respected in Destiny 1 is something I will always miss, and I hope Bungie see the feedback from Renegades as a sign to potentially revive the idea in the future. Bare minimum though, I would love for vendors like Zavala, Shaxx, and Drifter to once again have featured reward tracks that offer gear from their respective modes. Right now they feel so dead and unimportant, which is a stark contrast to how Destiny 1 handled factions and vendors as a whole. Next, I want to highlight certain elements of the looting experience that I believe Destiny 1 did better, starting with everyone's favorite, strike-specific loot. In Destiny 1, strike-specific loot was a system that made it so every single strike offered one or multiple unique pieces of loot you could only earn from that strike. And the way this worked is that at the end of every strike you would get standard rewards like usual, but there was also a locked chest which you could only open with something called a skeleton key, and doing so would guarantee a piece of strike-specific loot, with infamous examples including the Imago Loop hand cannon from the Undying Mind strike. This one came with the Fatebringer roll of Firefly explosive payload, which was especially coveted after the original Fatebringer was sunset. The Titan Maul's Maulers gauntlets, earnable from the Shield Brothers strike, which looked super awesome, and similarly the Mongrel Ogre's grasps from the Summoning Pit strike that literally made you look like Fogoth. This system is great for two reasons. Firstly, because you had one or multiple reasons to run specific strikes if you wanted to collect every single unique drop, and two, the cosmetics on offer was super cool because as you saw with the previous options, you were literally able to wear a piece of the enemy you killed. There are plenty more examples of strike-specific armor that are just that, and overall, it's just a very cool feature. Not to mention the fact that a lot of the weapons were also really good. Having something like a unique drop for each activity within the portal would be something I'd really love to see, and in fact, this was one of the ideas I had for my portal video. Imagine running Caldera had the chance to give you a special version of Giver's Blessing that had an extra origin trait like nanotech tracer rockets, and had the chance to drop with attrition orbs in column 3. Same goes for Conquest as well. Imagine if each of those had unique drops. It would certainly give more of a reason to rerun them, and thankfully since that video Bungie have re-added Grandmaster Nightfalls in the form of GM Vanguard alerts, which do feature a weekly specific drop. However, the system can be iterated on. The second element of the loot chase, which I believe Destiny 1 did better, was rare cosmetics, and we already touched on this a little bit in the faction section, but it wasn't just them that offered rare ships and shaders. Most activities had some sort of rare drop that you'd always be excited to see. Things like ship schematics could drop, which allowed you to exchange them for a new ship from Amanda Holiday, but at least to me, by far the best rare cosmetics were the ones you could earn from raids. Who here remembers ships like Nano Phoenix from Wrath of the Machine, sparrows like the XVO Timebreaker from Vault of Glass, which was also a Destiny 1 exclusive sparrow type known as an overdrive sparrow, which allowed you to go faster at the cost of your sparrow exploding, or the coveted Weldfire shader from Wrath of the Machine that gave an awesome black and orange look. The one thing that all of these cosmetics had in common is that they were substantially rare and required multiple runs of the raid they came from for you to ever have a chance of earning them. But whenever you saw someone using these cosmetics, you would think, damn, that guy's got some really sweet loot, I really want that. And of course, it also incentivized playing the raid a bunch, getting your weekly runs in and having a good time with your friends. Trials of Osiris also offered the Trials ornaments, which I believe you could only get one per week, which funnily enough is actually something that carried over into Trials of the Nine in Destiny 2 with the flawless ornaments there. However, when you saw someone with a full Trials ornament set in Destiny 1, you just knew that player was talented. And also, they looked absolutely amazing. If there's one thing that Bungie nailed, it was the cosmetic chase across the entire game. And I think rare cosmetic chases are something Destiny 2 is sorely lacking and could really do with going forward. Like I mentioned earlier, the Praxic Blade colors are a really good step in the right direction, and I hope Bungie continue to move this way. However, as things stand currently, Destiny 1 did it better. Next, I want to discuss something that's particularly relevant to the current state of Destiny 2, and that is the weekly Rotator tab that Destiny 1 featured, and how it has some pretty obvious parallels with the portal from Destiny 2. Inside the Director in Destiny 1, neatly positioned in the bottom left corner, was a selection of activity nodes that changed either weekly or daily, including but not limited to a weekly rotating raid, a weekly Prison of Elders challenge, a weekly Nightfall strike, the Siva Crisis Heroic Strike playlist, a daily rotating story mission playlist, and a weekly Crucible playlist like Mayhem, Zone Control, or Clash. This little menu was essentially a super easy way of seeing where to start your week every time reset rolled around. Knock out a Nightfall with some friends to farm some strange coins, play some Crucible and strikes to earn Treasures of Ages, which were essentially loot boxes that gave some sweet Eververse cosmetics. God, how gaming was different back in 2016. Or if everyone was online, you'd tackle the weekly featured raid, because this was also at the time when the Age of Triumph update was a thing, and can we just talk about that for a second? Every single raid in the game brought up to power with updated rewards, updated mechanics and difficulty, and a killer cosmetic chase in the form of the Age of Triumph ornaments. These armor sets were nothing short of peak and made running the raids so incredibly worth it. Not to mention, on top of all of the updated weapons, armor, and so on. The weekly rituals tab is ultimately comparable to the likes of the Portal or even Vanguard Alert, since the former is trying to achieve a similar thing. However, in Destiny 2, we don't have any updated raids or dungeons for that matter. It's just Desert Perpetual and Equilibrium for the time being, and neither have cosmetic chases on the level of the Age of Triumph ornaments, except maybe the Taken Crystal for the Praxic Blade. The Portal in general is a decent stab at a daily/weekly checklist system, but more often than not, simple is better, and dare I say, the easy to access, simple weekly Rotator from Destiny 1 did it better. Next is PvP, and this may be a bit of a hot take, but I truly believe that for Destiny to thrive as a game, there needs to be an equal focus on both PvE and PvP. Even now, with the state that Destiny 2 Crucible is in, taking a look at the concurrent player count, we can see that 2 out of the top 5 modes are both PvP ones. And looking at recent years in Destiny 2, unfortunately PvP has taken a massive backseat when compared to PvE, and I'm mostly a PvE player, you guys know this. However, there was a time where I was genuinely into Destiny 2 PvP, and I really wish I could go back to that. And the difference with Destiny 1 is that it felt almost like PvP was more important than the PvE we all know and love. And guess what? As a result, the game did so well. Trials of Osiris was such a smashing success during House of Wolves and beyond, and literally launched careers for certain Destiny creators. Believe it or not, but there was a time where Destiny PvP was absolutely massive. And it's no surprise coming from the makers of Halo, one of the most renowned PvP franchises ever. The Taken King expansion brought 8 new Crucible maps, which is something that's really hard to imagine happening these days. The last time we got new maps was all the way back before Final Shape, where we got 3, but this was almost 2 years ago at this point. And neither Edge of Fate nor Renegades brought any substantial changes to PvP. In fact, they seem to create more problems. However, this isn't to say that Destiny 1's PvP was perfect. There were plenty of problems with the meta, especially with things like sidearms during Rise of Iron, but you've got to admit that the PvP experience was far better in the original. And I actually want to highlight a comment from the J-Man here, because he states that Destiny 1 completed the gameplay loop by actually supporting PvP, chasing weapon rolls in PvE, testing them in the Crucible, and ultimately fighting for the best gear in the game in Trials was unmatched. DLCs releasing a handful of maps was a great bonus, which is so true. PvP was the ultimate endgame in Destiny 1, it had the best loot and especially the best cosmetics, and I really hope that after Marathon releases, Bungie dedicates some serious resources to revitalizing the PvP experience in Destiny, because in my opinion, it's crucial for making sure the game remains healthy. Now for some quickfire miscellaneous things, obviously I have to bring up Wrath of the Machine, which I will always hope makes its way into Destiny 2 at some point. Such a beloved raid locked away, and my god how funny it would be if Destiny Rising releases their version of Wrath before the mainline game, mostly because of the recent Crota's End reprisal that happened there, which I heard was actually really solid, so props to Destiny Rising for that. But yeah, come on, we need to see Wrath back in D2 someday. The tower in Destiny 1 is arguably a far better social hub than in Destiny 2, as I agree with Piggy here, the D2 tower feels so temporary, whereas the D1 tower feels much more like home. The vibes were truly unmatched, with the Traveler hanging in the background, and of course the music, the tower PA, getting on top of the vaults. Nothing from the D2 tower really feels the same. Also, everything in Destiny 1 from a content perspective is mostly still there to be played and experienced in its entirety, with the exception of things like trials or events like Iron Banner, something which isn't possible in Destiny 2 due to sunsetting. This next one is a small thing, but back in D1, strikes had variants which mixed up the enemy race you fought every time you played them. In the gameplay here, I'm running a Fallen Saber Strike, yet I'm fighting Hive and Taken. And in D2, the same strike is always Fallen enemies. And the little burst of variety this system gave was really appreciated and helped to mix things up. The Etherverse in Destiny 1 was far less egregious and controversial, but as I'll come to discuss shortly, that's mostly because it was a very different gaming landscape back then. Microtransactions were far less prevalent and had only just started to gain their footing, but as a result, the majority of the best cosmetics in the game were earnable through gameplay. Trials ornaments, Age of Triumph ornaments, all could be collected through the player's hard work. And now you can buy a full set of Taken armor for simply opening your wallet, which is a little sad, you know, but it's just a product of the times. I don't think we'll ever go back to a world where the coolest cosmetics are earned strictly through gameplay, though one can hope. Of course, we also can't do a video like this without mentioning Sparrow Racing League, a fan favorite event that may be returning in the future. Many pointed out out that the speedometer asset from the final Renegades campaign mission was almost identical to the one from OG Sparrow Racing League, though the cope is strong with this one. However, the format in which the portal supports similar events like Heavy Metal or Call to Arms does give me some hope that Sparrow Racing League will make its return eventually, because yeah, it seems like it would fit perfectly into the way events are handled nowadays. Another personal gripe I always had with Destiny 2 is that the armor design could never top that of Destiny 1. Something about how the pieces all joined together in the first game and how overall the theming was way more science fiction rather than a mixture of fiction and fantasy like we have now just made me more of a fan of the armor in the first game, especially the sets we got during Rise of Iron like from Wrath of the Machine and Trials. And let's not forget the character poses too. On your screen right now I'll be showcasing a couple class by class comparisons for both games, and it's hard for me to say that I prefer the Destiny 2 looks. Overall, this isn't a massive deal though, since there are also some seriously cool armor sets in Destiny 2, but I do believe Destiny 1 did it better. Finally, certain activities in Destiny 1 also took place on locations that we couldn't physically patrol. Areas like Mercury and the EDZ were only found through Crucible maps, and overall made the universe feel larger as a result. We also can't forget the infamous Nightfall glow, which you earn from completing the weekly Nightfall, allowing you to show off a little in the tower, and how exotics were super rare, coveted items that only a few people had. But to be honest with you, I think random drop exotics are long past their novelty. Me personally, I'm totally fine with them being gone, but I do sympathize with the point of view that exotics these days are mostly used for marketing and selling new pieces of content. If you look at Renegades, for example, Service of Luzaku is from the Season Pass, the Praxic Blade is from the campaign, and Heirloom is the only one that's a semi-random drop. Bungie could perhaps make more exotics per expansion like they used to, placing half as random drops and the other half as quests/marketing like they are now, but I don't know how realistic that is. Though I do admit there is something I miss about seeing an exotic drop and actually being excited about what it might be. Lastly, this is something I've seen a lot of people comment on over the years, and that is the superior art direction and overall vibe that Destiny 1 has compared to Destiny 2. And while I do think that a lot of that does come down to rose-tinted glasses, to be honest, there is certainly something to be said about how Destiny 1 just feels different to Destiny 2. It's far more gritty, gruesome, more immersive at times. Think back to when you'd see fire teams opening the Vault of Glass in patrol, join random guardians battling the Court of Oryx or Archon's Forge, again in patrol. It was more mysterious, more unknown, but in a good way, and I think it just comes down to the fact that Destiny 1 was a game made in a very different time for gaming in general. There was so much less information out there, players were discovering things on their own, the universe was fresh and exciting, and overall these things just combined into a gaming experience that was truly something special and ultimately led us all to becoming devoted fans of the franchise. This isn't to say that Destiny 2 is lacking in the art direction department though, no. Some of my favorite locations like Europa, Savathun's Throne World, and the Pale Heart are all excellent examples of a clear and brilliant artistic vision. Destiny 1 was just different, you know? In a sort of you kinda had to be there type of way. So I'll reiterate what I said at the beginning of the video. Objectively, Destiny 2 is a better game than Destiny 1. However, there are certain systems and novelties that Destiny 1 possesses that the sequel has yet to recreate. And if there's one lesson I think Bungie could learn from this is that oftentimes simple is better. A smaller scale weekly rotator, simple progression systems like factions that offer rare cosmetics and as a result keep people playing during dry periods, a balanced approach to improving both PvE and PvP simultaneously. All of these things Bungie have done in the past, so I really hope that in 2026 Destiny can become something reminiscent of, or at least learn from the times that came before. But with that, we have come to the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you resonated with my points. This video took a good bit to put together, so if you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and be sure to comment down below what you think Destiny 1 did better when compared to Destiny 2. Anyway, that's all for today. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.